Have you ever stood silently in a crowded room when someone threw a sarcastic remark that you're too naive, too slow, or not smart enough to join the conversation? They laugh. Others glance at you. You swallow the anger down your throat, unsure how to respond properly, and then you leave, not because you lost, but because there wasn't a response cold enough to silence them. That feeling wounded in silence is strangely familiar. In a world where intelligence is defined by volume and speed, the quiet ones are often underestimated. But that isn't the truth. Stoicism teaches that true wisdom needs no proof. It's revealed in how calmly you withstand provocation. Being insulted doesn't make you less intelligent. Reacting hastily is what makes you appear weak. In this video, you will learn 5 Stoic ways to respond, not with noise, not with retaliation, but with enough quiet strength to turn insults into traps that expose the attacker's own shallowness. 1. Silence, with a reverse demand. He spoke to the whole room, his gaze half challenging, half condescending. Maybe you don't really understand how customers think. This proposal is too naive. All eyes turned toward her. Some stared at their laptops, others scratched their chins to appear neutral, but everyone waited. How would she respond? She didn't smile. She didn't blush. She didn't rush to explain. She simply looked up, her voice steady and unbroken. I'd love to hear your perspective. What do you think the customer is actually thinking? And the room, once strung tight like a wire, fell into sudden silence. Not everyone has the courage to stay silent when attacked, but not everyone who stays silent is weak. Some stay quiet out of fear. Some stay quiet because they're used to enduring. But some remain silent to let the other person expose themselves. And in that moment, silence stops being retreat. It becomes a counter-strike. Not to wound, but to force the attacker to face the emptiness they're trying to mask with arrogance. Silence that compels others to speak, that is an art. Stoicism doesn't teach you to react emotionally. It teaches you to respond with awareness. When insulted, you have 2 options. React immediately to protect your ego, or take a beat to understand what the attacker really wants. Most of the time, they don't care about right or wrong. They don't truly want to offer feedback. They just want to see you lose control. And every time you get angry, rush to defend yourself, or raise your voice, you've just confirmed they're right. But when you hold back for 3 seconds, and instead of fighting back, you calmly ask a question, you've just reclaimed your power. Responding with a question is how the wise stay in control without raising their voice. It's not an attack, nor is it submission. It's psychological leverage. When you ask a clear question, which part of my proposal do you find lacking? You're forcing them to provide evidence. You're making a quiet demand. If you think I'm ignorant, prove it with logic, not attitude. And in that demand, you place the attacker in a test they're rarely prepared to pass. The woman in that meeting, after offering a polite, "I'd love to hear your perspective," simply listened. But the more he spoke, the more hollow he sounded. His arguments were vague, no data, no structure, just trendy buzzwords. Customers want authenticity. We need to connect emotionally. This isn't how Gen Z reacts. She didn't interrupt. She didn't frown. She simply nodded and followed up. So what data leads you to believe this proposal doesn't resonate emotionally with customers? That question was like a silent blade drawing a line behind the arrogance was a void. This story is not rare. Perhaps you've been the one in that room, disregarded not because you were wrong, but because you didn't respond in time, and afterward, you walked away, tormenting yourself with thoughts like, I should have said this, or I shouldn't have stayed silent. But what you needed wasn't a stronger reaction, it was a deeper one. A response that makes others question how they treat you. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." Don't mirror your attacker by being louder, sharper, more cunning. That's what they're waiting for. They're waiting for you to lose your balance. But when you don't reflect them, you reflect the nature of their behavior. You've stepped out of their game. You're no longer the one being attacked. You're the one steering the reaction. The key lies not in the words, but in the tone. If you ask, so specifically, what part do you find unreasonable? But your tone drips with sarcasm, you've already lost. But if you ask with calmness and genuine curiosity, then your question won't be seen as defiance, but as a reasonable request. And from that moment on, the attacker loses their grip. They're forced to become the one providing clarity, something they're likely unprepared to do. In the workplace, especially in environments where silence is often mistaken for incompetence, the ability to ask the right question is a survival skill. It's not manipulation. It's how you defend your dignity without hurting others unless they choose to expose their own weakness through their answers. When others are forced to explain, they often retreat. They realize words are not invisible weapons. Words must be backed by real understanding, otherwise, they'll turn against their own speaker. Epictetus once taught, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." That quote isn't about forcing yourself to endure disrespect. It's about realizing you can choose your response without being ruled by emotion. And sometimes that response is simply a question. Could you clarify what you mean? That question doesn't harm anyone, but it demands truth. And most insults cannot withstand the truth. Silence stops being weakness when you learn to use it as a strategic pause. And when you pair that silence with a clear, honest question, you don't just preserve your dignity, you take command of the entire space. The aggressor won't know where to go next. They can't shout into emptiness. They can't strike at a mind that won't flinch. All they can do is retreat or fall into the very trap they set for you. Next time someone questions your intelligence with a condescending remark, don't react too quickly. Count to 3. Stay silent longer than usual. Then ask a question, not to defeat them, but to let them prove why they felt the need to raise their voice in the first place. 2. Help me understand the reason behind that statement. Attacks don't always come from the weak. Sometimes they come from those who appear powerful. But it is in those very moments that you gain a rare opportunity to see a truth most people avoid. Many criticisms are not grounded in reason, they're simply emotional reflexes. And if you're calm enough to move past the surface of the words, to ask a question instead of reacting, you'll reach the core that the other person is unconsciously hiding. You're no longer the one being hurt. You become the one who sees clearly. The woman, after that meeting, didn't feel victorious. She didn't take her colleagues' silence as a sign of dominance. She understood something far more important. She had preserved her worth not through words, but by refusing to become a mirrored opposite. But sometimes people won't stop at sarcasm or silent disapproval. Some will attack you openly and even hope that you react so they have their next excuse. In those moments, another question becomes sharper than any rebuttal. Could you help me better understand the reasoning behind that comment? It sounds simple, but to ask it with sincerity, without a trace of resentment, takes inner strength. Because deep within our instincts, we want to fight back. When our intelligence is questioned, the first feeling is usually anger, not from pain, but from injustice. But if in that very moment you can set emotion aside, look your critic in the eye and ask for an explanation, you've already risen above instinct's pull. You're forcing them to enter the realm of reason, a place they rarely have the foundation to stand on. That question isn't an interrogation. It isn't a trap. It isn't sarcastic. It's simply a request. Show me your thinking, your analysis, your logic in arriving at that conclusion. And it's that very simplicity that throws many people off. Because most judgments about others' intelligence aren't the result of thought, but of defense. They see your confidence, and they feel the need to pull you down so they don't feel small. They see you're different, so they label you stupid to protect their worldview. But when asked to explain, they have to pause. They're pulled out of emotion and into thought, a space they may not be ready for. Mike went through this during an internal presentation. He proposed a budget cut to reallocate resources toward a new product group. As soon as he finished, his boss, known for sharp criticisms, immediately said, "That's a stupid idea. Clearly you don't understand how finance works in this industry." The room fell silent. People glanced at each other, but no one intervened. Mike said nothing for 3 seconds. He didn't smile, didn't defend, didn't look shocked. He simply looked at his boss and calmly asked, "Could you help me understand which part of my analysis led you to think that?" The question swept through the room like a cold breeze, not harsh, not an attack, but it forced the other man to confront what had been up to that point a purely emotional blow. And the irony was, when asked to explain, his boss couldn't provide anything specific, just vague phrases like industry reality, market standards, or traditional methods. Mike followed up, still calm and steady. What exactly are those standards? Could you share examples of how other companies in our field have applied them effectively? He wasn't challenging. He was requesting the truth. This kind of response embodies what Marcus Aurelius always pursued. Wisdom lies not in defeating others, but in seeing things clearly without letting emotion cloud your mind. When you ask someone to explain, you create a space where reason must take the floor. And when reason is absent, confusion will reveal what you never had to say out loud. Those who've been underestimated intellectually, whether openly or subtly, know the pain of being misjudged. But you won't recover your worth by shouting. You recover it when you force others to think, to examine their own bias. And the most effective way is to lead them back to the question, what's your real reason? No one can hide behind tone forever. No one can mask gaps in logic with hollow confidence for too long. A well-timed question, asked with calm, doesn't just slow down confrontation, it exposes what was once hidden beneath power's surface. And the truth is, you don't need to defeat them. You only need to let them stumble over what they've never examined. The question, what's your reason, is that light. It doesn't make you small. It doesn't make you someone begging for validation. It makes you someone willing to learn, but not easily manipulated. Only those who are strong enough dare to seek truth, even from the mouth of someone who just insulted them. That question, when asked without malice, holds more power than the sharpest argument. Because it not only forces the other to think, it shows that you are unshaken. You don't need to raise your voice to protect yourself. You only need a question and a calm that can't be bought with experience alone. Next time someone mocks you, implying you're not smart enough to understand, look at them for 3 seconds. Don't react. Don't defend. Just ask, could you help me understand the reason behind that statement? If they have something real to say, you'll learn. If not, you've just let them expose their own nature without lifting a finger. 3. Expose the assumption. That's an interesting assumption. What makes you think that? Not every insult is spoken from careful thought. In most cases, they're simply felt. They feel you're threatening their comfort zone. They feel you're challenging what they believe to be true. And from that feeling, they leap to a conclusion. But this conclusion isn't built on data, logic, or real experience. It rests on something far more fragile: assumption. You're seen as less intelligent because you don't speak like they do. You're seen as lacking understanding because you don't see things their way. You're called naive just because you don't share their skepticism. All these labels come from a chain of unchecked assumptions. And if you want to respond while keeping your composure, you must learn not to negate their claims, but to invite them to re-examine the very foundation on which their judgment stands. The question, could you help me understand the reason behind that, is a step away from emotional reaction. But sometimes asking for a reason isn't enough, because they might cling to vague feelings, piecing together scattered details to justify themselves. In such moments, you don't just need a reason, you need to shine a light on the assumption beneath it. And that's when a gentle but weighty statement can make them stop and look down at their own footing. That's an interesting assumption. What makes you think that? This question doesn't deny them, doesn't challenge them, doesn't put them on the defensive, but it frames their statement clearly. What they just said is an assumption, not a truth. And you're giving them a chance to prove whether it's grounded or merely reactive. That question is like gently removing the truth label they've attached to their opinion and handing it back. I'm not rejecting it. I just want to know, where did you get it from? David did this at a dinner party when another guest, a CFO, suddenly remarked with a sneer, Hearing you talk about inflation, I'm guessing you've never read a serious economic report. That wasn't just an insult. It was a way to diminish David in front of others by painting him as an amateur, unqualified to contribute. But David didn't get upset. He didn't rush to list his credentials or financial conference experience. He simply smiled, set his glass down, and said, "That's an interesting assumption." What makes you think that? That question, seemingly light, was actually a pivot. It forced the man who had granted himself the right to judge to turn inward. It's a classic move used by ancient philosophers to separate assumption from truth. The question doesn't need to be loud, just placed in the right spot. And in that case, David's counterpart, after a pause, mumbled vague reasons like, "The wording sounded naive," "Your tone doesn't match that of an expert," or "That view isn't widely accepted in the industry." But the more he spoke, the more it became clear that his conclusion wasn't rooted in evidence, but in feelings, bias, and unchecked assumptions. The question, "What makes you think that?" isn't just about reasons. It goes deeper. It touches the psychological structure behind someone's judgment. And if they're not used to examining themselves, they'll start to fumble. Not because you embarrass them, but because, for the first time, they're asked to reflect on the lens through which they view others. But in everyday life, few people do this. They don't realize they're living within assumptions until you point it out. And the strange thing is, when you point it out gently, without defensiveness, people don't feel attacked. They just feel illuminated. They'll either back off or, for the first time, begin to question how they think. This kind of response, when practiced and delivered sincerely, can completely shift the dynamic of a conversation. It transforms you from a target to an observer, turns an attack into an examination, and in that space, the one who maintains curiosity holds the real power. Not because he's right, but because he's unafraid to search for the truth, even from within criticism. What matters is that you learn to say that question without bitterness. Not as a trap, not as a mental game. Say it as someone who truly wants to understand. That's an interesting assumption. What makes you think that? That sincerity is what strips away their tactics, renders their performance hollow, and demands that they face themselves honestly. And you must be ready to receive the answer, because sometimes they do have a reason. And when they present a well-reasoned argument, you haven't lost. You've gained insight and kept your calm, your respect, not out of pride, but because you've stayed aligned with your values, composure, wisdom, and a refusal to let emotion override reason. No one can diminish your worth unless you react as if that worth is under threat. But if you accept even contempt with a response that resembles a philosophical inquiry, you've shown that you don't need to prove you're right. You only need to prove you are thinking. 4. Pointing out the truth. It's interesting how people resort to personal attacks instead of addressing the issue. When someone is forced to re-examine their assumptions as you did in the previous part, they will react in one of two ways. Either they go silent and begin to reflect, or they retreat into instinctive defense, that is, personal attack. And that very moment is when you can most clearly see weakness wrapped in arrogant language. They no longer have logic, no more facts, no ground to overpower you with thought. The only way left to regain control of the game is to attack who you are instead of what you've said. At that point, you don't need to say much. You don't need to defend. You just take a step back, view them from the outside, and gently name what everyone in the room already senses but no one has dared to say. It's interesting how people resort to personal attacks instead of addressing the issue. That's not a counterattack. It's a way to regain control of the room. You're not raising your voice to silence anyone. You're simply stating a truth, but that truth holds the weight of a mirror placed directly in front of them. Because the moment you say it, the entire room begins to look in the direction you just pointed. They realize they have just witnessed a shift into undignified territory. And the only one who stayed composed, who didn't strike back, was you, the one who just revealed the true nature of the attack. Jennifer, a mid-level project manager, used this approach in a strategic meeting with the leadership team. When she proposed a new direction for a client's strategy, a senior colleague snapped, "What a naive idea. You're still too young to understand this industry." The room fell silent, not because the remark was clever, but because it was clearly a personal blow. Jennifer didn't flinch. She didn't retaliate. She simply looked up and said calmly, "It's interesting how someone begins with a personal attack instead of analyzing the proposal together." The silence that followed was heavier than any shout, because at that moment she was no longer the one being judged. She was the one describing reality and forcing everyone else to look at it. Stoicism doesn't teach you to win every argument. It teaches you to remain lucid amid chaos. And lucidity is when you refuse to engage in a win-lose game based on someone else's rules. Instead, you elevate the entire conversation to a higher ground. When someone attacks you, you don't return the blow. You use reason to show they've struck in the wrong direction. They're not solving the issue, they're trying to validate themselves by hurting you. And truth, once named, always has the power to push falsehood into retreat. When you learn to observe others' behavior like you're watching a play, you stop being emotionally entangled. You begin to see repeating patterns, instinctive reactions, psychological tactics disguised as debate. And from that distance, you can point out the truth without accusation. You don't need to win. You only need to make clear what is actually happening. The phrase, "It's interesting how people resort to personal attacks instead of addressing the issue," doesn't need to be said with sarcasm. On the contrary, the more sincere it is, the more powerful it becomes. Because it shows you're not offended, not angry, not reacting. You're simply... And because you see, others will start to see too. They'll begin to realize that the quiet man who doesn't retaliate isn't weak. He's just moved to another level of the game. It's also important to say, this statement isn't for every situation. If you speak it with contempt, it backfires. If you say it too early before the person exposes themselves, it becomes an attack. But if you wait for the right moment, when the insult is clearly a way to avoid the issue, when the conversation shifts from dialogue to demeaning, then that's the moment you can gently illuminate the room with calm and precise observation. This line also doesn't shut down the conversation. It opens a new rhythm where you can still continue, still invite them back to the discussion if they're willing. Because after you've pointed out the behavior, you can still say, "That said, I'm still open to hearing your thoughts on the proposal rather than on me." That's not forgiveness, it's recentering. And sometimes the very person who just attacked you will sit back, unsettled, and respond this time for real. And the strange thing is, when you observe deeply enough, you no longer need to react. You just need to let the other person see their reflection in a philosophical mirror. A mirror that is neither distorted nor colored, just faithfully reflecting the truth. If you can do that a few times, the world will begin to see you differently. They'll no longer see you as someone easy to push. They'll begin to choose their words more carefully. Not because you're threatening, but because you're the one person who doesn't need to raise his voice to still make others listen. 5. The higher ground. I respect your point of view. In the end, when all their attempts to belittle you have failed, when their insults are diffused by your razor-sharp awareness, when the tension that could have exploded is instead returned to stillness by you, there remains one thing they never anticipated. You still respect them, not because they deserve it, but because you've outgrown the need to prove yourself right, and because of that, you are no longer bound by anger. You can calmly say, "I respect your point of view," not as submission, but as the establishment of something beyond reaction transcendence. It may sound weak, but those who've lived through enough disappointment understand. Forgiveness isn't forgetting, it's refusing to imprison yourself in someone else's energy any longer. When you say, "I respect your point of view," you're not denying that they just insulted you. You're also not validating their words. You're simply declaring that you are free, not governed by that insult. You don't retaliate. You don't explain. You let them keep what they want to believe. And you keep your composure, the one thing they can't take from you. Maria, a woman running her own company, was once publicly belittled by her own brother at a family gathering. "You're not smart enough to run a business. Let people with real minds handle the finances." He said it in front of the entire family, deliberately trying to make her feel small, but Maria didn't get angry. She didn't claim she was competent. She didn't cite her revenue or degrees. She just smiled, looked him straight in the eyes, and calmly said, "I respect your point of view." Then turned and continued her unfinished conversation with someone else, as if that insult were just one opinion among thousands that had passed through her life. That moment, the room went silent, because everyone saw the stark contrast between the two. One tried to assert dominance by causing harm. The other never needed to attack, yet preserved her dignity. And strangely, it was her gentleness that made him lose respect in others' eyes. No one remembered what he said, but everyone remembered Maria's composure. Because sometimes, the strongest response is no reaction at all. Epictetus once taught, "If someone speaks badly of you, and it is true, correct yourself. If it is a lie, laugh at it." But beyond right or wrong lies the ability to preserve one's character, even in the face of injustice. You don't always need to correct or laugh. Sometimes you just need to be still like a lake, where disturbances can't ripple far unless you continue to stir the surface. The phrase, "I respect your point of view," isn't for those who need to win every argument. It's for those who no longer wish to live in constant opposition, those who understand that every opinion, even the harshest, represents just a fragment of perception, never enough to define who you are. And if you don't grant them the authority to define you, then their judgment becomes meaningless. This kind of transcendence isn't a psychological trick to confuse your opponent. It's the expression of someone who no longer needs to clash, not out of fear, but because there's no need. You've chosen to reserve your energy for something more worthy, for silent progress, for rebuilding from within, for the formation of a person who cannot be dragged down by mere words. When you practice responding with respect, you no longer remain trapped in the fight over who's right. You step out of it as someone who's grown, not moved by applause or booing. And people begin to see you differently, not because you're better than anyone, but because you're different. You don't need to win. You just need to hold steady, and that for someone pursuing Stoicism is the most valuable victory. I once let offense dictate my response. There was a time during a meeting when someone bluntly said I wasn't capable enough to understand the issue they were discussing. I reacted immediately. I used logic, evidence, and tone to refute them and prove I wasn't as stupid as they thought. But after that meeting, I didn't feel like I had won. I just felt exhausted because I had let my self-respect be dragged into an unnecessary battle. Back then, I didn't understand this. The one who insults you doesn't need to be taught, they need to be witnessed. And the only thing I should have shown wasn't brilliance, but composure. In later moments, I didn't argue anymore. I just looked at them, and sometimes I would simply say, "I respect your point of view." That sentence didn't save the relationship, but it saved me from the trap of fleeting emotion and helped me preserve lasting stillness. If any of this resonates with you, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss future content. You don't need to raise your voice to be heard. You just need to be deep enough to be impossible to ignore. I'll see you in the next video.